Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. About a year ago, I was on vacation. We sat at a table and had dinner with the next speaker, Dr. Richter. And we struck up an amazing friendship. And I'll read his bio. He's a retired colonel in the U.S. Air Force and a very interesting person. Dr. Richter was the first in his family to be born in the United States. Both parents survived World War II in multiple concentration camps in their native Poland and Germany, followed by a displacement persons camp in Germany before immigrating to the U.S. penniless. He watched as his parents worked long and hard to succeed. Dr. Richter received his bachelor's degree from Temple University. He was attending a master's program at Drexel University before receiving his doctorate in dental surgery from Georgetown University. He received a certificate in advanced comprehensive dentistry from the University of Florida, as well as the American Dental Association Dentist Recognition Award. He is a fellow and master of the Academy of General Dentistry, a recipient of the prestigious Lifetime Learning Service and Recognition Award. He had his own practice for 21 years and then became active duty in the Air Force, retiring in 2016. Thank you, Dr. Richter.
I thank everyone for coming out this evening and for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit, for those who can't, a little bit about what I do know, a little bit about what I don't know, a little bit about horrors, a little bit about miracles, and a little bit about kindness. Now, first I'd ask everybody who's known their grandparents, please raise your hand. How many have done that? How about aunts and uncles? Cousins? Well, that's the first thing I don't know. I'm clueless. My grandparents were exterminated long before I was born. Most of my cousins, most of my aunts and uncles. The ones that remain were spread, very few. As a matter of fact, I only had one full cousin, much older than me, who was born in Czechoslovakia, post-war Germany, and emigrated to Australia. Never met her. Both of my parents were in concentration camps. Now, concentration camps, a lot of people think they're like U.S. prisons or detaining. No, they aren't. Concentration camps were really primarily of two different types. If you could be of use to the German Nazi war machine, you went to a labor camp. The Minister of Armaments, Albert Speer, had figured out that, he could get this many calories of work out of you before you slowly starve to death. So if you could work, you went to the labor camps. Once you couldn't, you went to the extermination camps, the 7 types of camps. If they thought you were too old, too sickly, or of no use for the war machine, you went straight to the extermination camps, which later on were known as gas chambers. Initially in the war they used bullets, but they felt bullets were getting too expensive. So they figured out how to use insecticide in gas chambers. I spoke about my grandparents a little bit. Both my parents and my grandparents were from Bench in Poland, near the German border. So when war broke out, they were pretty much in for the whole ride. My grandparents on my mother's side had a hardware store. On my father's side, a textile store. And what would happen is, again, if you were used to the German war machine, they kept you around a little while. Overseers were put in both their businesses until the overseer could learn how to run the business, and then they were sent to the extermination camps. My mother would have been sent to the extermination camps. The German overseer had pity on her, wrote a note that would have got her into the labor camps. She took the note, she forged her friend's name on it to save her friend's life too. She really didn't want to leave her mother. She wanted to stay. She cried. She said, "I want to stay with you." Can you imagine the horror of her being told by her parents, "Look, you have to go. Maybe there's a chance for you. There's no chance for us." Well, she and her friend survived the war. They got into labor camps. If they had been discovered that it was forged, they both would have immediately gone to the extermination camps. My dad's older sister was married to a physician. When they first went into the camps for sorting, they were told, "Hey, you know what? You're a physician. We'll let you and your wife survive, but you have to send your 8-year-old son to the gas chambers." They wouldn't. They all went to the gas chambers together. My father, for a while, worked at a plant. Part of his thing was working at a plant that was supposed to change coal to gasoline for the German war machine. The Allies knew pretty well when it was about ready to come online, and they bombed it every time it would come online. One of these times, air raid sirens went off. My father and his brother, in the same camp, they went and ran into a little air raid shelter. It was nothing more than a little dugout with branches, logs on top of it. Went in there, the German officers went, "Juden, raus!" In other words, Jews, get out, you can't be in here. So they stood out in the field, watching as the Allied bombers came overhead. Strangely enough, the first bomb that fell was a direct hit on the shelter. All the people that were in the dugout were killed. My father and his brother were also survivors of a death march from Blachhammer to Buchenwald. 15,000 started the march. 2 survived to the end. As they marched along, he and his brother struggled to stay at the front of the line. You see, in these death marches, you didn't have stragglers. If you were at the back of the line, they just shot you and left you in the snow. Another time, after one of these bombings, there were 2 of the prisoners. They'd been in so long that their pants didn't stay up anymore. They had lost so much weight. They found a piece of wire after the bombing, tied it around their waists. A German officer saw them and said, "This wire is German war material. This is sabotage. We have to be reported." So, another Jewish person known as a capo. Capo was sort of in between the prisoners and the guards. A Jew, but one that was cooperating a little bit. He said, "Don't worry, I'll report them." So the German officer went away. He came back 3 days later. He found out they had not been reported. All 3 of them hung together. My father also worked as an assistant for a while with a welder. This was a German fellow, kind, helpful. My father was his helper, so every now and then he would say, "Go to my toolbox and bring me this tool." My father knew what that meant. He'd go and get the tool, but in the toolbox would be maybe a small piece of bread, maybe a piece of cake. He would eat it immediately, because if they were caught, both of them would get in trouble. Now, soon after that, some sparks started a small oil fire. He knew, okay, this is the end. They're going to kill me. I'm the Jew. I'm going to get blamed. Well, what happened the next day, the word was coming, the Allies were on their way. All the people from that camp were loaded into cattle cars, and the trains moved toward Germany. After a couple of days standing in cattle cars, the train was stopped. German officers took the engine. They said, "We need this." Well, everybody kind of knew what it was. The Allies were coming. The officers wanted to get out of there rather than be caught. So they took the locomotive and went away. Soon after, the Red Cross and the American soldiers, they came and they liberated the people that were there. Wonderful. Now, you might think, hey, now they get some food. You'd be surprised how many of them got sick because they weren't used to getting much food. As soon as the Red Cross gave them, if they couldn't keep back and eat very slowly, they got very sick themselves. After the war, my father was in a displaced person. Feldafing, Germany, was the camp. He was there working for the Joint Command. Basically, since he knew textiles, they had him sorting clothes and other items in a big warehouse. Well, another person that came from his town saw him and said, "Morris, your girlfriend, she's still alive. She's in this other camp." My father went, got on a train, went up and got her, brought her back to Feldafing. They were married that night. Someone caught a fish in the lake. That was their wedding feast. They stayed in Feldafing for about 4 years while my father worked, until he could dot all the I's, cross all the T's to be able to come to the US and get all his papers done and get the sponsor and everything. My older brother was born in Germany. So that was mostly from my father's recollections. In 1996, Steven Spielberg, survivor of the Shoah Foundation, came in, their East Coast camera crew interviewed him for about 90 minutes. By this time, my mother had already long passed away. My mother, in her lifetime, rarely spoke. It was too painful. I had once asked her something about the war. She started to cry. I never asked again. So there was only really two things I knew about the war from her. One is, in the house, I was never allowed to use the word she, because apparently the German officers lined up the women and would point out she, she. I don't know where they went. I suspect the gas chambers, the ones that were picked out. The second thing I knew from my mother was when the Nazis marched on Skokie, I was a kid. I said to her, you know, these are just nuts. And she gave me a look I had never seen before, stone cold look, and said, you know, in Poland, this is what we thought. And you know what? Don't think it can't happen here. With that, I thank you all for listening and giving me a chance to tell the story of people who can no longer tell the story.